Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg had a private meeting with the president-elect today at Mar-a-Lago. This was just confirmed by Trump aide Stephen Miller. Now, Zuckerberg did not endorse either candidate during the election, but did tell Bloomberg in an interview that Trump standing up and pumping his fist, telling crowds to fight, fight, fight after the first assassination attempt was, quote, one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life. Back with us, Maggie Haberman, who reported that story for the New York Times. So, Maggie, what more can you tell us about this meeting between the president-elect and Mark Zuckerberg?
So we're still learning about it, John. It was earlier today. Zuckerberg may still be there. Zuckerberg showed up in Florida with some of his advisors. It's not clear that whether Zuckerberg saw at this meeting or Trump saw at this meeting, but one person described it as Trump essentially saying, hey, why don't you come over to Mar-a-Lago? And as you said, Zuckerberg had expressed praise for Trump earlier this year for his defiant posture after he was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania by a would-be assassin. It's interesting, a couple of things about this. You know, clearly Zuckerberg wants to have a better relationship with Trump. Zuckerberg, once upon a time, was a funder of an immigration advocacy group. Stephen Miller is Trump's one of his most powerful advisors, and also the person who largely drives or shares with Trump his hardline immigration agenda. And so it's really interesting hearing Stephen Miller talking about this meeting on television earlier. I think we will learn more, but we are seeing, as with a number of industries, but certainly the tech industry, a lot of people coming to Trump and not the other way around.
That Miller-Zuckerberg dynamic, really interesting to note that. So other than these meetings, right, I mean, Trump has by and large filled out a lot of his administration way quicker than he did in 2016. So the question now is, what does he do with December, for instance? Do you have any sense of how he plans to spend his time?
Golfing, meeting with people at Mar-a-Lago. I think enjoying the time that he's still in Florida before he comes back to Washington, which has never been a city he especially loves. I think, is it possible he will take a trip somewhere? It's possible, but I don't think there's any plans to at the moment. I think the goal was to try to get as many of these positions in place as possible for a variety of reasons. But one is so that hearings, assuming that they don't get recess appointments and the Senate to recess and then shove a lot of these more controversial nominees through, which I think is not likely. It's still possible. I just think it's not likely at the moment. Assuming there are hearings and Senate confirmation hearings, the goal is to get those done pretty fast so that Trump can hit the ground running once he gets in office. That is part of the goal for this breakneck pace. It's also to avoid some of the jockeying that you had in the 2016 transition. It's not to say there has not been a lot of internal knife fighting in this one, because there has. It's just been different.
All right, Maggie, stick around. I want to bring back Scott Jennings and former Democratic Congressman Mondaire Jones. Scott, let's just start with this Mark Zuckerberg meeting. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm not surprised that he would want to go see the president-elect, and I'm not surprised Donald Trump would want to see him, too. I mean, these are two of the most powerful people in the world, and they can probably help each other with a tremendous amount of stuff, whether it's of a policy nature or information distribution nature. So, I'm glad to see, though, that people are going, and what this tells me is there's some acceptance that Donald Trump is the president-elect and that he's going to be our president come January. I remember back in 2016, it just felt like there was this sort of immediate resistance to Trump, that there was a lot of external and internal resistance to him. I don't really sense that this time around, and I see world leaders engaging with Trump. I see Mark Zuckerberg engaging with Trump. This is a good thing. We may have a couple of years of political peace in this country if this kind of these kinds of things keep up.
I'm going to clip and save that comment from you right there, Scott, and play it back to you in 6 to 8 months. We'll see if it still holds.
Please do.
Congressman, is the Democratic Party losing Silicon Valley? It really does seem like more and more Silicon Valley executives and insiders are at least going out of their way to, if not meet with the president, at least president-elect, praise him.
Like, I think if Kamala Harris had won the election, Mark Zuckerberg would be going to pay homage to her, too. He's got a significant policy interest in this. Having served on the antitrust subcommittee in Congress, I know that regulating the world's largest tech companies, Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon, is one of those rare areas of bipartisan consensus. Republicans want to do it for different reasons. They think that these companies are censoring conservative speech. Democrats typically want to do it, regulation that is, because they think that these companies have been anti-competitive in the marketplace. And so I think it behooves him from a business standpoint to visit with Donald Trump. This is very different, by the way, from Joe Scarborough going down to Mar-a-Lago and bending the knee after cultivating a brand for himself as someone who's going to stand up to Donald Trump, who poses an existential threat to our democracy. That's just hypocrisy.
Well, looks like the Silicon Valley billionaires just keep on walking through Mar-a-Lago. Tonight, it was Mark Zuckerberg's turn. The Meta CEO went down there to meet with President-elect Donald Trump. A Meta spokesperson confirmed it, said it was Trump who invited Zuckerberg, and that Zuckerberg was, quote, grateful for the meeting. Just remember, Facebook booted Trump off the platform after January 6th, before then reinstating his account in 2023. The two have had, let's just call it a rocky relationship, to say the least. Well, joining me now, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Brad Todd, and former special assistant to President Biden, Megan Hayes. Glad to see you both this evening. Brad, they've had a bit of a contentious relationship, Trump and Zuckerberg. Trump actually once threatened to have him jailed, if we can all recall that. So what's it all about? Why this meeting?
One phrase and three numbers, Section 230. The social media giants currently are protected from liability suits based on Section 230. Media companies could be sued if they say things that defame other people, but social media companies cannot.
Because they're a platform that just basically is like, I'm hosting you, but it's not responsible for what you say.
That's correct. However, Mark Zuckerberg and many other platforms began curating people, as we all know, which deciding what stays on the platform, what doesn't. A lot of Republicans in Congress, people like Josh Hawley, think that that means they should be liable. If you're making decisions about the content on your platform, that means you're not just neutrally hosting it, then you should not have that special liability protection. With Republicans in charge, both the White House and Congress, I think Section 230 reform is on the agenda. And Mark Zuckerberg, he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of that.
It's part of what the incoming FCC or nominee has focused on in previous writings as well, the idea of Section 230, and this accusation that there has been censorship by those who hold these platforms. So what would stand out about Trump's having a friendly relationship with, say, Mark Zuckerberg? He already certainly has one with Elon Musk.
I mean, I think this is a mutually beneficial relationship, right? Like, I think this is beneficial for Mark Zuckerberg to go down there. They had a really tumultuous relationship in his first term. And I think it's smart for him to go down there just for the reasons you're mentioning. But this is a massive place of media for him. This is another way that Trump can reach voters where they are. But it also, Zuckerberg needs him on his side. They need to get along. And so I think this is trying to mend the relationship that they didn't have in his first term.
I mean, Congress has tried to do this, though. I mean, the idea of Trump talking to Mark Zuckerberg and that would solve the issue might be farcical to the members of Congress who've been trying to not only understand technology, but also to try to reform Section 230 and bring it up to sort of congressional code, so to speak. Then you've got people like Elon Musk, though, Brad, literally posting and putting federal workers on notice on X that he wants to fire some of them. He actually named, I think, 4 relatively unknown employees, examples of people that he actually does want to fire. Why would he do that as a way of promoting perhaps the Doge department?
Well, of course, Elon Musk is not going to have any official authority in this White House. It's outside the government that the Doge is going to operate. I think in the end...
You think that's true, though? He seems to have a lot of influence.
I think it's influence. Influence, but not authority. Those are two different things. I think he does have a lot of influence, and I think that in the end, the Doge is going to end up focusing not on individual people, but on more structural reforms. For instance, we have spent $42 billion on Joe Biden's broadband program that hasn't signed anybody up on the internet. They spent tons to build 17 charging stations for electric vehicles. Those are the kind of wasteful government programs that are going to be either contracted out to providers who could do it, or right-sized, or maybe even move some of those departments out of Washington. But I think it'll be macro picture before all said and done.
But macro would be what you said. The micro would be naming individuals. Why take that route then?
I don't think he should. I think we've seen in the last 24 hours all of these people who have been swatted and who have had bomb threats at their house that are now public figures. I mean, they've been public figures but are being named. These are people who either are political appointees or civil servants that are being named in an unfair way. Elon Musk seems to have a vendetta or personal issues with them or what their offices are doing. So it's not appropriate for him to be doing that. But I do agree that they should be looking at the government holy and not at individual people.
No one's house should be swatted. No one's should be in their driveway.
That goes without saying. You know who agrees with that? Elon Musk thought that when they were tracking his flights. He was particularly perturbed about that and not having sort of privacy, it's befuddling to think of why he would do that. But also, you've got longtime Trump ally Steve Bannon telling Puck's Peter Hamby that Musk was the deciding factor in Trump's win, saying, to be brutally frank, it's the reason we won. Do you agree with that?
I agree with Steve Bannon on very little, but I'm going to halfway agree with him on this.
Really?
I think that one of the key demographics for Trump that he improved on versus last time was with younger men. And I think a lot of younger men see Elon Musk as a disruptor, and they see that he's changed a lot of industries that they find relevant to their life. John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania, the Democrat, said that a lot of young men saw in him Tony Stark, the Marvel hero. And so Elon Musk is kind of that mysterious, superhero person to some people. So I think it was more important the endorsement than Oprah, and maybe a more important endorsement than Taylor Swift in this presidential campaign. So I might buy Steve Bannon's argument on this.